In today's video, I'm going to teach you a proper installation for a deck railing so that 10 years after you build it, you can't just pick it up and walk away with it. All right, it is railing day. I'm so excited because I've got about 2 hours to finish this job off before I get flooded out from a rainstorm that's coming. So let's get to work. We're putting in a horizontal rail kit. If you've never seen this done before, it's really simple. We are going to go with a top and bottom rail that comes pre-drilled. We're going with cedar to match our deck. And then of course we're going to have this top plate that we install it up to and leave a gap at the bottom. That way everything stays nice and dry. And then we're going to finish all this off with a decorative drink ledge. We're going to put a 5/4 by 6-inch board on top. And that way we have a surface on the top that we can screw together from the bottom. Everything will be clean and shiny, and we can sand and polish it and have it beautiful years to come. We're going to finish this whole system over to the stairs and down or 2 steps onto the regular landing. And we're going to do these really gradual because when you get visitors to the house, it's nice to consider the fact that Grandma is only 5 feet tall and she just can't high step it like she used to. So instead of going with a 9.5-inch stair, we're going to go with 3 steps here with a 6-inch rise. And that'll be simple to build. We're just going to use 2x6 and make a couple of boxes, tie it together so no one slips, and voila, we're going to have ourselves a finished project. Let's just walk through the real simple process for installing these. And it really is simple. So you've just got to know a couple of things before you get started so you don't mess this up. One thing we're going to know is this center post here. This is the anchor. This one is perfectly plumb, and my top rail is measured and installed already to receive the railing kit. So I am exactly 49. Oh, we're going to call it a half, but it's a tight half. Okay? From the base to the base. And if this is plumb, and that's 49.5, and I cut my top rail 49.5, then no matter what happens over here, when I screw all this together, this will be plumb. Basic law of math, right? So we are going to just double check this. 49 3/8 we're going to call it. Now this kit is going to throw you for a loop because it has end caps. And these get installed on the end of the rail, top and bottom, and then you set it in place. And then they have these little places here that you can actually use to screw these into the wood so that you're not screwing through the end of the wood, you're screwing through a plate. And that'll keep your rail from breaking and rotting out over time. And they're a little decorative. They're going to match the caps that are going here. And so that's cool. So what you have to do is take the 2 plates together, measure the thickness of both those plates, and it turns out to be 1/2 inch. So I got to take that off of my measurement. Remember, we were what? 49 3/8 minus half is? Yeah, 48 7/8. Good guess. So we're going to cut 2 pieces 48 7/8. We're going to do the same process all the way around the deck, measure from the base to the base, and then cut 2 for each section. And then we'll assemble it all and then stick them in place and mount it with the screws. It's that simple. There's not a lot of brain work involved here. Just make sure that you're measuring the base and that's the number you go with no matter what. And everything else will tighten up and close square and plumb. I'm going to have a very consistent gap on both ends. And if you want to know how to set your posts so you have consistent gap on both ends and you're not watching the whole series, watch the first section on framing because we outline how to put those posts into your frame in that section. Just to show you that we got this right, we're going to pretend like this is all screwed together and see if it fits in place. Perfect. Loving it. Now this particular rail is going to be about this high, but before I install anything, I'm going to attach all the spindles in the top and the bottom, screw it all together, and then we'll shove it in. And they are really giving us a lot of screw here. This is like a 2-inch screw. I'm only attaching a 1/4 inch material, so it's a little ridiculous. Yeah, but there's really no way that's going to come off no matter how old this rail gets, I guess, eh? Now, some of you may have seen my son Nate did a little video on this kind of process not too long ago, last year sometime, right? And I think he was a lot better at it than I was. He got a real knack for sticking these things in real quick. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that video because this is frustrating. One of the benefits to this system, guys, is you can actually go out and buy this piece of lumber with all the holes drilled already, and it's already set up so it matches the code for the gaps, so you can't have kids falling through the gap. So it's really handy that way. Now, if you want to be one of those people, I think I spun that around backwards, didn't I? Yes, I did. If you want to be somebody who makes your own gap size and drill your holes, go right ahead. But for my money, I like to get something that's already pre-drilled. Got all our rails. Get yourself a tapping block. This says cedar, and it'll get beat to just smithereens if you're pounding it indirectly. And it'll leave all your wood with all kinds of ugly dents. So that's a good way to distribute the weight. And we haven't attached anything here yet, which is good. Boom. Yeah, nice and simple, because we've already pre-measured knowing the height of this. And we were just looking for a little bit of gap under here so it would be able to dry after rain. So now the height of this bracket attached to it does the perfect job of setting that up. It's almost too stupidly lucky, I mean. Now these screws go on a bit of an angle, and you want about a 1/2 inch gap from the front. So pull it a little bit further over, maybe at 3/8, because you know when you tighten it up, it's gonna pull it over. All right, the idea here is you're gonna have 2 screws on the backside, because that's where you want most of your strength, is keeping it from falling over. This is the best part of the job. Okay, now watch this. I'm gonna hug this up nice and tight. Boom, now it's all pulled nice and tight. Let's put a level on that and we'll see if we're plumb. Yeah, there we go, rocking. So at this point, we're just gonna finish putting all of the structural screws in, and then we'll tie a couple of screws in from the top into this section, getting rid of this gap here so you don't have an air space here. Nothing worse when you're sitting down and looking past your railing and you see space in between your rails. So we'll get that nice and tightened up, and then we'll be able to cut our 5/4 on top and screw that from the bottom. And this is a perfect drink ledge, perfect height for standing up there and relaxing and having some time with your friends. All right, so now we are at that point where it's time to separate the men from the boys. The finishing touches. Now, bear with me here, because railings are a finishing touch. This is where the details come into play. Everything else is basic carpentry, measure and cut and screw together. But when you get into your finishing touches, your railings, things that your hands are coming in contact with, everything's got to be perfect. Your sight lines, little things like this. So I've cut this top plate that we talked about. This is the 5/4 board. Goes on top of the rail. The idea is you want to split the difference on the gap. It ends up being just shy of 1 inch on each side from the post to the corner, okay? What you do here is you actually want to soften up this edge. This edge is actually sharp. It's not very attractive. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop down to the chop saw, and we're going to cut some corners off, take our palm sander, soften all that up, and then we'll come up and screw this in place. Now, because of the way that your saw may or may not work, if it's a slider, it's easy. You can cut any direction you want. But because the board is so wide, I've actually got to cut on the inside. So I'm going to flip my board over, which means I'm going to have a rough edge on both sides of the board. But it doesn't matter. Like I said, we're going to palm sand all of this first before we put it in. We're going to just take our palm sander. I'm using a 220 grit just because cedar is a softwood lumber and it doesn't take a whole lot of energy, and you can just burn right through the whole board. So I've got the speed. I'll turn it down to the halfway on the speed just so that I got a chance to get used to how fast it's going to be working on this. Different levels of effectiveness depending how dry the cedar is. So sometimes you just got to learn by trial and error here. You can see I can also get rid of whatever dirt comes from the factory here. Just softening up the edges. Keep in mind that since we're going to be using our hands on these, really want to make sure that no one's going to have an injury. Just want to work it until all those marks are gone, but be careful not to over sand. That's why I've got the speed down low and a nice soft grit. If you over sand this after it gets wet in the next rainstorm, it'll get all grainy on you, and you won't be very happy with the result. You can see in the grooves here, okay? You've got these lines and then a space. Each of these are a different material, okay? So the lines are actually a much dense, tougher material. And so when you're sanding, you'll sand that soft spot, and because it's because of the different densities, you're actually causing a little bit of a scoop. You don't even see it. And when it rains, all of this swells, okay? And so when you buy this right out of the store, because it's wet cut, all of those in-between spots are already raised. And when they dry, they're going to shrink down on you. So you might even find it necessary a month from now, just before you go put your clear coat finish on, come back with the palm sander and give it one more shot. Get rid of the ridges. So this handrail is nice, but this, now that's sexy. When you're about to put this on, remember I was talking about attaching it from underneath? If I go straight in, I'm going to come out the top, all right? Even if I put it on an angle, like look how aggressive my angle has to be. And when you start putting things on an angle like that, weird things happen to the wood. It starts getting pulled around and it has a tendency to want to buckle on you. And you can do it if you have to, but I would suggest spend the extra few bucks, pick up a shorter screw, something like a 2-inch, because this one, even if I put that screw straight in from underneath, okay, I'm getting just enough grab there. I'm going to be real happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sink it plus a little bit, and I know I'm going to be fine. Yeah, remember, gravity's the best friend here. All we're doing is securing it in place. Yeah. So give it a good pinch with your hand. Put your screw on a bit of an angle, because when you get near the top, the sides of the drill is going to come in contact with the railing. It's going to restrict your ability to drive that screw. You might strip the head, and then you're in a whole lot of mess. Okay, now it's buried, plus a little bit. So the last part of the railing system is when you're in one of these tight corners up against a brick wall. It could be brick or vinyl or anything else for that matter, but what I'd suggest is instead of going with a 4x4 post and then putting another big 4x4 post here and then just having some stupid little gap, go this way. You'll see this in houses all the time with handrails. You'll see this on century homes whenever they have a porch. They always take one of their finished boards and they attach this assembly, put it in place, and then they attach this to the building. Because we're going to have a set of stairs here, we're going to attach a railing, and we want to have that triangle effect for strength. Because a railing isn't just for pretty, it's for safety. So if you're coming down your stairs and you wipe out and you grab that rail, you know, like I'm 200 pounds, I put 200 pounds of pressure on that railing, it's got to hold me up so I don't wipe out. If you don't attach to the house, you're really missing out on the multiplication effect of the strength of that triangle. So what we want to do, and if I see this one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. I see all the time, people will drill a hole in the mortar joint to put in their screws. Now that's basically sand. And if you put something in the mortar joint with sand, and every time somebody grabs a railing and you get a bit of a jiggle, it starts to clear all the sand out. Before you know it, you got a huge hole in between the bricks, nothing's holding nothing, and you've lost all your strength. You want to drill right into the brick. The greatest idea is to drill through the brick behind here so that your hole is covered from visibility from the outside. And that's all you got to do. Now, if you don't have a hammer drill, that's fine. I don't have a hammer drill this time around. I'm going to use a regular drill to demonstrate. Just a VSR drill. You get the Tapcon screw kit from your local building store, and you get the one that has the bit in it. So you always have the drill bit that's the right size. You won't be disappointed. Now, without the hammer drill function, this takes a little bit longer, but still very effective. Okay, you see how long that hole is? Traditionally, when the bit comes with the screw, the amount of meat on that screw is equal to the depth of the screw. Sorry, the amount of meat on the bit is equal to the depth of the screw. So if I drive that part of my drill right up to the wood like I did, I know when I put my screw in, I've got room to actually set the depth of the screw. So this is gonna be great. And we just set our screw here. Oh, hello, puppy. Now feel that. Listen to that torque. That isn't going anywhere for 100 years. And if you really want to, you can take some time, get a little bit of plastic wood, fill that hole, and then sand it all back later and make it invisible. Now I know what some of you are going to be thinking. You're going to be thinking, oh, we should drill all the way through until we get in contact with the wall behind the brick. But keep this in mind. The brick is 4 inches deep, then there's an inch space, plus you've got an inch of wood, right? So now you're dealing with 6 inches, and then you've got probably a 1/2 inch piece of wood, OSB. If you go all the way through into that OSB, that's not going to be any stronger, especially since what we're looking for is the strength of this vertical movement here. There's nobody going to be able to rip that out of the wall. That's not the concern, because our 4x4 post is right into the frame. If this is a surface mount, maybe that's a concern, and you might want to open the wall from the other side and block it and drive yourself an 8-inch screw in there. But, dear Lord, that's a lot of work to avoid having to put a post into the framing.